Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us here at Beyond the Book with Julie. This is the education series, and today I'm here with Diane Tavenner. Diane, so good to be with you.
Julie, it's great to be with you. There it is.
Yeah, your book, Prepared. What Kids Need for Prepared Life, for a Fulfilled Life. We are going to talk today about your journey, and you started out, you graduated from USC, you worked in Torrance in public school, and then you went up to the Bay Area, worked in public school, and now you run many charter schools. Let's talk first about what your days were like in public school and really what you found to maybe not be working so well.
Yeah, Julie. I taught in both Southern and Northern California for a number of years. And, what does work well, I think, is just young people and kids are truly amazing. And I think we don't give them enough credit. They're passionate about the world and learning. And so those are the pieces that work well. But when you're a teacher, the way the system's set up is you're kind of alone and isolated in your classroom. And you're sort of just charged with this one little piece of their education. And there's not a lot of space for thinking holistically about the students and thinking collaboratively about developing them and thinking about that over multiple years. And there's all these constraints and pressures that come from, whether it be the federal government or the state government or the local expectations, all these layers of what is most important and what people are telling you is most important, which very often isn't about the development of the whole child. It's more about a number on a test score or a dashboard.
Exactly. And so what have you found over the years that helps to cultivate, more of a growth mindset and those pieces that you talk about as far as the entire child and the holistic, being?
Yeah, Julie. Well, one of the best things that happened to me was becoming a parent while also being an educator and sort of bringing those two minds together. And so I think where I would start is, what do we want as parents for our kids? And it turns out most of us want the same things. We want our kids to be happy. We want them to have good lives. We want them to have relationships and community and purpose and meaning. And of course, we don't want them living in our basement. We want them to be financially secure and successful. But that can take so many different forms. And what that means is it's not just pure academics that school needs to partner with us on to get our kids ready. It's a whole set of what we call the habits of success that help our kids really be productive people in school and in career and in life. And so really zooming out and thinking much more holistically about our kids' development is where we found we had to start to really rethink how we were preparing them.
And I know you also consult with a lot of public schools. What do you continue to see as some of the gaps in the traditional schooling? I think people are becoming more and more aware that just teaching to the tests are really not working. And a lot of kids are sort of, becoming just like glazed over, not really paying attention. How, what are some more of those gaps and how do we overcome them?
Yeah, I think where we are now is a lot of people recognize these challenges and they're frustrated by them and they're concerned. And you have a lot of well-intended people. The gap becomes, okay, what do we do about it now? And how do we go about fixing it? And I think one of the biggest challenges is school is so hard-coded in our society, Julie. When you ask people about school, most people get a very consistent image in their head. It's like, Monday through Friday, like 8 o'clock to 3 o'clock. It's like period after period, and you have a locker and a textbook and a test, and those very people can't imagine it being different and they can't, they really struggle to start to think about how would we reorganize and redesign ourselves to be different. And you start running into all of these challenges when you start to try to rethink and redesign. And so I find that to be the biggest challenge now. It's not that people don't recognize what kids need. It's not that they are not well intended, but how to actually go about making it happen in this very defined system is challenging.
Yes. And what do you think are, in consulting with a lot of public schools, have you found what sort of helps to lay the foundation, or what the number one sort of step could be that, administrators can take towards that direction?
Yeah, we have found a couple of things on this front. So first, it really has to be a collaboration between school leadership at a district level and a site level and a teacher level, and families and parents and kids. And so it really, schools are of the community. And I think we sort of forget that is the origin, that is the vision of education in America, that schools are really of communities. And so the place that we always start with communities is asking them, what is going on in your community? What are your realities here? What are the realities of our world? And what do you guys value? What do you care about? What do you want? And you have to start there in the conversation, because if you just start way ahead of what currently exists and trying to change it, there's no why, and people get attached to and tied to things, and they don't understand the purpose of it. And so you got to go all the way back to what does the community value, what's important to them, and what do they expect the school to do? What's the job of the school? And then you have to ask, is the school doing the job that you all want it to be doing? And that really is the moment where things start to get unlocked, I think.
Right. So it's really about communication. Communication is key, and having collaboration and talking between everybody, the community, the administration, the teachers, each school site, really understanding from everyone's perspective, right?
Definitely. This
But
is everyone.
right. And who does that start with? Who, puts that in play? Is it the school board? Is it the administration? Is it the community?
Well, I think that in our experience in working with, hundreds of schools and districts across the country, we've found that places that are successful at this have a set of conditions that really enable them to be successful. And I will tell you, at the top of that list is leadership, is really, and so a school system and district does have to have leadership that is able and willing to engage the community, leadership that has a commitment to students being at the center of schooling and work, that a leadership that is willing to be bold and courageous, because change is hard. And so there's no doubt that leadership is one of the, if not the most critical conditions to enable this this redesign, transformation, or updating, redecorate, whatever you want to call it, of what we need to do for our schools. Leadership is certainly at the heart of it.
In your book, Prepared, you lay out a lot of ideas and a lot of ways to move these things forward and to really help students in whatever school that they're in. Who is it that generally picks up your book and then makes the call to get more information or to get your tools into their district? Is it school board members? Is it administration? Is it a principal of a school? Or is it parents?
Yeah, it's such an interesting question. It's been really fascinating to just follow, who the book is resonating with. And lots of different people. I hear from a lot of parents who just are really reading the book and just looking for inspiration. And, as you know, we've started a group called Prepared Parents that's really taking the book and translating it into amazing tools, with some new ones out this week that are just stunning and beautiful and helpful. And certainly I hear from a lot of educators, a lot of teachers who feel like the book is speaking to them. This is what they want to do, and they feel really confined and strained. And so they're seeking ways to actually help move their schools in this direction. And then definitely leadership. And Julie, I'll tell you something that is a little bit sad to me. The Prepared has been released now in most of Asia and a couple of other places around the world. And the level of educator interest around the world is much higher than in the US. It just anecdotally from my experiences and who I'm hearing from. And so it just makes me wonder, as a country, like why we're so tied to an approach that everyone kind of agrees isn't working really well for our kids, but we just are struggling to figure out how to move to something that would be closer to what we care about and what our kids really deserve.
When you speak with people internationally and you speak with many people in this country, what are you finding are some of the biggest differences as to why internationally educators are more open-minded and ready for change and ready to implement more for students as opposed to this country?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think one of the things that I hear that really resonates with educators is the approach to learning that is project-based in nature. And so really turns away from this traditional lecture, textbook, test, and is much more hands-on and real world and problem solving. And, this really resonates with educators and parents and kids, but, that's what I hear is, they're very clear that in order for their countries to be competitive in the global economy and for their kids to be really ready for the jobs of the future, that sort of rote learning is not doing it for them. And they need this more holistic approach that develops all these skills that can be used over, multiple subjects and time. And so that is the piece that's really resonant. And for some reason in the US, again, we just are so stuck in our tests and our, this strange drive to
right, to just stay with the way it's always been. But do you think that could be because it takes so much time and work and collaboration to reimagine it and to change things? I mean, it would be a complete overhaul, right? It would be taking entire systems and sort of putting them by the wayside and completely rewriting how you go about the day to day. And maybe it's like, where do we even begin?
I think it maybe is a little of that. And the other thing I think, that is different between the US and other countries is the US, the power in schools is so distributed in the US. We don't actually have really federal control. It's state control, and states cede it to local school boards. And so I think it's unclear to people whose job is this and who decides this, and it gets really mixed up. And in other countries it's much clearer. Many of the education systems are federally run, and so you just kind of have a much more systematic top-down approach, which obviously has its pros and cons. And so I do wonder if people in the US just don't feel empowered and they don't know who the person or the people are who can make these decisions. Right. And so I
then
wonder
nobody makes the decision.
Exactly. Which comes back to leadership, why leadership is so critical, right?
Right. Leadership and also collaboration, right? And to be able to find out what others are doing, what's working well. Um, really important. Going back to the students, how do we help make this traditional setting more student centered? I mean, I know we just talked about, how other countries are more student centered and what they're doing, and experiential learning and hands-on learning, so important. But, at even a higher level than that, before we even change the systems, there seems to be a sense that, if you ask questions or your child's not doing well, it's like, oh, are you jumping to ask for some sort of special needs help? Or, it's there's a defensiveness. What is that all about? And how do we change that mindset?
Yeah. Some of the things that have been really successful for us in working with teachers and students and communities and whatnot is taking an approach that, is kind of a design thinking approach. And, design thinking has sort of entered our culture now and our society. I'm, here in the Bay Area in California, where this approach is a very big kind of way you think about things, but you really start with something as simple as what we would call empathy interviews. And, one of the most powerful things we've done, Julie, is we actually have, adults go and shadow a student for an entire day of school. And they just go through the whole day. And inevitably, when they come out of that day, they're like, oh my gosh, that was terrible, and they just see and feel the experience and how it's disconnected and it's boring and it doesn't make sense and it's all rules based and they start to have empathy and understand, and then they start to ask questions. Well, why is it like that? And why did that happen? And that's really the beginning place of starting to make something student-centered, is you actually can't just be nostalgic and think about what your school was like with rose-colored glass. You have to go now in this moment in time, and you have to really experience it and then understand what the shortcomings of it in order to then to start to think about what could and should be different. And that's been one of the most powerful things that we have done, is taking that approach.
I love that. And empathy in general, right? I mean, just going beyond that, but empathy in general. We all could use more empathy as adults, as students, all the way around. There's a lot going on in the world right now regarding race and, inequality and all of these things. And empathy, I think, is the key factor. And yes, empathy in our schools, and understanding what our students are feeling on a day-to-day basis. Are they in an inspired learning environment? Are they engaged? Do they even want to go? Or are they completely burnt out?
For good reason, and what could we do about that? Yeah, it's powerful.
Yeah. So empathy being really important, really getting people, leaders, to go in and dissect what is happening and feel it and see it. Is there anything else that you would, advise, or that you have seen work well when leadership is strong? And what creates that strong leadership besides, collaborating, talking with the community, going into the classroom, feeling it from the student's perspective? But is there anything else?
Yeah, I'm going to say science. So here's what people don't really realize or understand, is that we, the collective we, have learned so much in the last 20, 30, 40 years around how people learn and how they develop and it is science, and it's researched and well documented, and there's a whole body of knowledge that schools weren't originally built on, and the designs of our schools did not take into consideration, that we know now. And the places that really look to and draw on and bring that knowledge into the work they're doing in the science and incorporate it are the places that are most successful. in redesigning to something that actually matches the needs of the community and the students. So they bring this empathy and this deep understanding, this clarity of what the community wants and needs from schools, and then what we literally know works on that front. And they bring all of those things together. Because if you don't do that, Julie, it's a natural human thing to just go back to the ideas that are familiar to us. So we go back to what we experience, and everyone went to school for the most part. And so they all feel like they know what school should be and looks like. And we shouldn't be calling on those experiences. They're actually not supported by the science for the most part. And what we know now is how people learn. And so I would say that's the other really important ingredient.
When you look around at your schools, and I know that you've had great success and you have really students focused learning environments, what do you think is the number one driver in making your schools such positive experiences for the students?
Yeah, well, our kids tell us this, and our parents tell us this, and we listen to them, and our teachers. At the heart of our schools is a relationship between a student and a mentor. And so when students come into our schools, they join a mentor group, and they have an adult mentor who stays with them for multiple years. And that relationship is so key. My schools are focused on middle and high school students, but this is true for all kids, that having an adult who is there, who cares about you and is invested in you and sees you and is coaching you on your goals and your habits and your growth and bringing you together in a community, that is invaluable. And again, it's supported by the science. The science is really clear about this. And so that is at the heart of learning. Human beings learn most and best when they feel safe and they feel like people care about them,
Right.
and they feel
valued and
valued.
seen. Right.
Exactly.
And I know that many private schools do these advisory type groups and make real efforts to, have communities that are really engaged and feel really supportive. But can this happen in public schools, or are they just too big? Is it just not?
Absolutely. And we've seen it happen, and we've worked with hundreds of schools across the country, giant schools that have really, once they value this, gotten very creative around how they change time and they rearrange how things are done. And what inevitably happens is every teacher says, oh my gosh, I'm doing the best teaching I've ever done because I really know my kids. I really know them as people. I know what they want. I know what they care about. I see them in a different way. Discipline problems go down, engagement goes up, everything gets better. And so the idea that, oh, we don't have time for that is just a misconception. This is the thing that you must make time for. And I'll just give you a quick example of this, Julie. We haven't talked about COVID and, the pandemic.
Right.
But this has come into just such a stark reality for us. When we came back to school this fall, after our kids have been out of school all throughout the spring and the summer, as everyone knows, so many schools across the country, the very first thing they did was test their kids. They sat them down for a test and said, we need to know how much learning you lost. Well, let's just think about the message that is sending. Right?
So negative.
It's so terrible.
Right.
You know what we did? For the first 2 weeks, we didn't do any academics, literally academics. We did all about kids. Where are you? Our mentors interviewed every single student for like 20 minutes in front of their mentor group and gave resonance and support, and we understood where everyone was, and we got backgrounded in community, and we talked honestly about how we felt and the challenges, and all, so that we could get ready for learning. And those are that contrast is what we're talking about here.
Right. It's the social, emotional, it's the knowing that you are truly supported and cared for, and you will thrive.
because that's what gives you the energy and the confidence and the trust to put yourself out there to learn.
Yes. Really great. I love talking with you. You just have so much insight and your heart is in the right place for all students. And we are very lucky for all that you do for students, writing this book, for parents, for administrators, teachers, for everyone to learn from. Thank you so much for all that you're doing.
Thank you, Julie. Take care.
Good to be with you. Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for watching the education series here on Beyond the Book with Julie. Have a great day.